Imagine it's 1960. You're sitting on the hot sand of Rio de Janeiro. The Atlantic sun is painting the coast in a long, warm light. There's the cold caipirinha in your hand, and the breeze carrying the scent of salt and roasted coffee. And then you hear it.
Bossa Nova, Bossa Nova, Bossa Nova.
A sound so soft it feels like a secret. A rhythm that doesn't drive you forward, but makes you want to sway in place forever. They called it Bossa Nova, the new way. To the rest of the world, it became the soundtrack of paradise, the ultimate relaxation. But paradise has a price. Behind the sunset glow lies a story of radical rebellion, a military coup, and an obsessive genius who spent 30 years locked in a hotel room chasing a single perfect vibration. This isn't just a genre of music. It's the story of how a whisper conquered the world.
This is just a little samba built upon a single note. Other notes are bound to follow, but the root is still that note.
If Bossa Nova was a landscape, Antonio Carlos Jobim was the one who captured its light. He was a man of the city, sophisticated, classically trained, yet deeply in love with the rhythm of the streets. Jobim did something revolutionary. He took the heavy percussive drama of traditional samba and filtered it through the cool mist of the morning.
So I come back to my first note, as I must come back to you. I will pour into that one note all the love I feel for you.
He looked at the French Impressionists and the cool jazz coming from the north, weaving them into melodies like Desafinado. He wasn't just writing songs, he was distilling an atmosphere. For Jobim, every note had to be as precise as a diamond, yet as effortless as the sea foam on the sand. He gave Bossa Nova its intellect, its elegance, and its eternal soul. But the soul of the movement belonged to a man who lived in the shadows, João Gilberto.
Olha que coisa mais linda, mais cheia de graça, ela, menina que vem e que passa, num doce balanço caminho do mar.
While Jobim composed the colors, João provided the heartbeat. His legend began in a tight bathroom in Diamantina, where he locked himself away for months to study the physics of sound. He was looking for a way to let the music breathe. By shrinking the massive samba percussion down to 6 nylon strings, he discovered a radical new intimacy. He stripped away the singer's ego, singing so quietly that the microphone became an intimate confidant. João taught the world that you don't have to shout to be heard. He had unlocked a secret formula of silence. But to understand how it actually worked, we have to look closer at the mechanics of his stillness. To the untrained ear, Bossa Nova sounds effortless, like a summer breeze. But underneath that calm surface lies a mathematical and emotional complexity. Technically, Bossa Nova was an exercise in doing more with less. The grand, thunderous orchestras of the past were stripped away, leaving behind a skeletal, intimate ensemble where every vibration mattered. At the center of it all is the warm, woody nylon string guitar. It trades the aggressive brightness of steel for a mellow, intimate resonance. It becomes everything: the lead, the percussion, and the harmony all at once. The piano is played with a minimalist touch, using sparse, elegant chords that hang in the air. First, there is the harmony. Borrowing from jazz, they use dissonant chords that feel unresolved, like a question left hanging in the air. These sounds create a specific tension, a feeling of being suspended between joy and sadness. Then there's the rhythm, the batida. While the thumb plays a steady hypnotic beat, the heartbeat of the city, the fingers create a delicate tension. This syncopation makes you want to sway in place, caught in a loop of time. The drums followed this restraint. The drummers used rim clicks, striking the metal side of the snare to mimic the tap of a wooden stick. They traded heavy sticks for brushes, creating a soft, rhythmic hiss on the cymbals that sounds less like a beat and more like the tide pulling sand back into the ocean. And finally, there's the voice. In Bossa Nova, the singer speaks directly to the soul, stripping away the ego of the stage. There is no operatic vibrato, no shouting, just a flat, nasal, almost whispered delivery sung inches away from the microphone. It's a sound designed for a small room, for a quiet conversation, for the middle of the night. But to truly understand Bossa Nova, you have to understand Saudade. It's often translated as longing or nostalgia, but that's too simple. Saudade is a paradox. It's the happiness of having had something beautiful, mixed with the sadness of having lost it. It's a tender ache. It's the sound of a bittersweet memory, like looking at the photograph of a lost love and finding yourself smile. In Bossa Nova, this feeling is baked into every word. While American pop in the 50s often leaned into grand declarations of love or the high drama of heartbreak, Bossa Nova was about the spaces between those moments. They sang about the micro-poetry of existence. They didn't sing about the storm, but the quiet after the rain. Not the tragedy of a breakup, but the silent presence of an empty chair in the corner of the room. This rebellion reached its peak with a specific approach to the voice, Desafinado. It literally means off-key, but for them, it wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. The message was clear. Honesty matters more than perfection. To the critics who wanted loud, flawless voices, Bossa Nova replied that beauty is found in the cracks, in the fragility of a voice, and in the notes that don't always land where you expect. It's the sound of a human being, not a machine. Everything, the grand and the small, is part of the same flow. This is the ultimate Bossa Nova philosophy. Life is not a series of crescendos, it's a series of breaths and quiet heartbeats. But Bossa Nova wasn't just a theoretical exercise. It was anchored in a very real geography. In the winter of 1962, Tom Jobim and the poet Vinicius de Moraes were sitting at their usual table at the bar Veloso, the place known today as the legendary Garota de Ipanema. They were watching a girl named Gelo Pinheiro walking to the beach. She moved with what Vinicius called sheer grace, a mixture of flower and mermaid. That moment inspired the girl from Ipanema. It wasn't just a pop song, it was the manifesto of the movement. It captured the fleeting nature of beauty, the girl who walks by, smiles at the sea, and remains forever out of reach. It made the entire world fall in love with a version of Rio that was both sun-drenched and deeply melancholic. Today, it remains the second most covered song in history, second only to the Beatles' Yesterday. As the sound spread, it took on new colors. Louis Bonfá brought a cinematic scale to the genre. His work on the soundtrack for Black Orpheus, and specifically his composition Mania de Carnaval, gave Bossa Nova its global passport.
I'll sing to the sun in the sky. I'll sing till the sun rises high.
It proved that this new way could carry the weight of a Greek tragedy while feeling like a summer morning. Then came Baden Powell, the mystical virtuoso. He was the bridge between the sophisticated lounges and the Afro-Brazilian roots of the guitar. He brought back the grit, the sweat, and the spiritual depth of the drums. While João Gilberto was the air, weightless, ethereal, and floating above the rhythm, Baden Powell was the earth. Together, they proved that Bossa Nova was a spectrum, stretching from the lightest breeze to the deepest treads. But while Brazil had already surrendered to this new rhythm, the rest of the world was still watching from a distance. That was about to change.
In some way or other, the Bossa Nova, at least the name, if not the music, has already made quite an impact in the United States. Do you like what you see?
I do and I don't.
In November 1962, the new way faced its biggest test. The Brazilian government, sensing a diplomatic opportunity, sent the masters of Bossa Nova to the most prestigious stage in America, Carnegie Hall in New York. On paper, it was a triumph. In reality, it was almost a disaster. The musicians were terrified. The sound system was failing, the language barrier that felt like a wall, and an American press that was skeptical. João Gilberto, ever the perfectionist, nearly refused to go on stage because the acoustics were not right. He was a man who needed total control, and New York was loud, chaotic, and cold. But as the first quiet chords floated through the hall, something miraculous happened. The legendary jazz giants in the audience, Miles Davis, Cannonball Adderley, and Dizzy Gillespie, didn't see a disaster. They saw the future. This was the night Bossa Nova stopped being a Brazilian secret and became a global language.
You know, because there is a big commercial wave. You know, this happened too in Rio. In the very beginning, Bossa Nova was considered non-commercial music. Nobody wanted to record. Then when Bossa Nova then everybody started to record Bossa Nova, you know, and then, you know, the thing was a little bit...
It was the night the North and the South finally understood each other's silence. But while the giants of jazz were listening, one man was already preparing to pick up his instrument and join the conversation. The friction at Carnegie Hall didn't stop the momentum. It only sharpened the mystery. In 1963, the movement found its perfect American translator, the jazz saxophonist Stan Getz. He teamed up with João and Tom in a New York studio to record an album that would change the course of music history. Getz and Gilberto became a cultural phenomenon. In an era dominated by the British invasion, this quiet, sun-soaked record did the unthinkable. It won the Grammy for Album of the Year, beating the Beatles' A Hard Day's Night. It was the record that introduced João Gilberto's ghostly voice to the masses. Suddenly, Bossa Nova was no longer a Brazilian secret. It was the soundtrack of global cool. It was playing in every stylish apartment from Tokyo to Paris, turning the new wave into a universal language.
And we had there the same phenomena I think you have here now. We had there Bossa Nova icebox, Bossa Nova washing machines, Bossa Nova lawyers, you know, and many things. And now I heard here in the radio Bossa Nova hair con, Bossa Nova shoes. No, this is not very good for the music.
With the world now at their feet, the final seal of approval was about to arrive from the very top of the American establishment. By 1967, Bossa Nova had reached the highest levels of global pop culture. Frank Sinatra, the chairman of the board, called Tom Jobim. He wanted to record an album together, but it was a collision of two worlds.
Young and lovely, the girl from Ipanema goes walking, and when she passes, each one she passes goes,
Sinatra was the master of big band swing, powerful, loud, and commanding. Jobim, however, insisted on the bossa rules. He pushed Sinatra to sing at a volume barely above a whisper. Sinatra later said he had never been more challenged. He had to learn that strength isn't always found in volume. The resulting album, Sinatra and Jobim, remains one of the most elegant records ever made.
but each day when she walks to the sea, she looks straight ahead, not at me. Tall, tan, young, lovely, the girl from Ipanema goes a-walking, and when she passes, I smile, but she doesn't see.
It was the ultimate validation. The world's biggest star had bowed to the quiet power of Rio. Bossa Nova also found its voice into very different women. Astrud Gilberto was the accidental icon. She wasn't even supposed to sing that day in 1963. She was simply there to accompany her husband João. But because she was the only one in the room who could speak fluent English, the producers asked her to try a few lines. When she stepped into the booth to sing The Girl from Ipanema, she created a new archetype, the detached cool. Her voice was vibrato-less, haunting, and completely devoid of ego, like a ghost haunting a beach in the late afternoon. It was the sound that sold Bossa Nova to the world, yet the industry treated her as a footnote. She was paid a mere $120 for the session, while the song made billions. Astrud became the face of a movement that never truly let her in. On the other side was Elis Regina. If the others were cool, Elis was volcanic. They called her Prementinha, the little pepper. She was a powerhouse who didn't just sing bossa nova, she lived it with every nerve ending. Her 1974 collaboration with Jobim, Elis and Tom, is often cited as the greatest Brazilian album of all time. Where Astrud was a breeze, Elis was a storm. She brought the fire, proving that Bossa Nova didn't have to be a polite background noise for lounges. She took the perfection of the studio and dragged it into the reality of the human heart, making the music feel alive, fragile, and dangerously beautiful. She showed that you could be sophisticated and raw at the very same time. However, as the 60s progressed, the dream began to fracture. In 1967, a bizarre event took place in the streets of Sao Paulo: the March Against the Electric Guitar. Bossa Nova purists were protesting against the influence of rock and roll. They feared that the acoustic soul of Brazil was being sold to American pop culture. This war of the guitars showed a country in deep conflict. While the older generation wanted to keep Bossa Nova pure, a new movement called Tropicalia was rising, ready to meet the country's rising political chaos with loud electric guitars. To these young rebels, the quiet whispers of Bossa Nova felt out of touch, a beautiful relic of a peaceful past that no longer existed in a country under the shadow of a military dictatorship. Perfection is a difficult place to live. By the late 60s, the sun-drenched songs about sun, salt, and sea began to feel like luxury Brazil could no longer afford. The artists who sought the absolute now found themselves isolated. But why did the dream end? In 1964, a military coup changed everything. Almost overnight, the optimism of the 50s was replaced by the cold reality of a dictatorship. Suddenly, singing about the beauty of a girl walking to the sea felt out of place. Some even called it alienated. The government began to censor art, and the soft words of Bossa Nova were drowned out by the screams of a country in pain. This tension ultimately broke the movement apart. The obsessive focus that once fueled João Gilberto's genius now became his prison. He retreated into reclusion, becoming a hermit in a hotel room, still chasing that one perfect vibration in a world that had become too loud. Elis Regina passed away far too young, and the original circle scattered. Like every beautiful track, the dream eventually had to fade out. Bossa Nova isn't just a genre in a history book. It's a philosophy. It's the art of doing more with less. It's the courage to be quiet in a world that won't stop screaming. Every time you hear that syncopated beat, you are hearing the breath of Rio. You are feeling the Saudade. And for a few minutes, the world feels exactly as it should. Beautiful, fragile, and wonderfully incomplete.